It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does on a Monday. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Great to have you with us. Lots to do over the next 60 minutes, as there is every day. The eve of the general election. If you have not done so yet, go and subscribe to our brand new Substack. SportsWrap Substack has my exclusive conversation with Chuck Todd. The whole 1 hour conversation. I thought we were doing 2 segments. It wound up being an hour. Go and check that out. Subscribe on Substack. We'll have links coming up throughout the show and reminders throughout the show to do that. All sorts of great new content that we'll be putting up every day over on Substack, including insider picks from this guy, Sam Yarnell, who hangs out with us on the program. Can I tell you something? This weekend was so busy, I didn't even look to see how he did on Page versus the Prince. Didn't even look. Did you?
Yes.
Do I want to know?
We'll talk about the Chicago Bears later, but they're completely dead to me. I was yet again, Jason Page, 2-2, because I have been plagued with the 2-2 disease ever since week 4 of the NFL season and cannot shake it. I honestly did not look at your picks.
I don't think I did well.
That's not true. There was one that you were way off on and one that you were way right on.
I got the Giants wrong, I think.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I got the Giants.
That garbage time touchdown got you real close, though. They wanted that backdoor worse than about anybody.
All right, Sam. Bill Bender will join us later in the show to talk college football. Some NFL thoughts. There are coaching firings to get to, including Dennis Allen with the Saints that we'll talk about. But let's start with me, and I did this in today's starting 5, which again is available exclusively to subscribers on Substack. 5 topics, 5 minutes, 5 opinions. I think the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in football, and I think we have to start acknowledging the fact that they are the best team in football. That's sort of the big takeaway for me now. Having looked at this team and what they've done from an offensive standpoint, I know they're going to have to outscore teams because their passing defense isn't great. But, their defense against the pass isn't great. But they are so dynamic offensively that if the playoffs started today for me, Sam, they'd be my pick to win the Super Bowl.
I get it. I think that it's important that we say that this is before Monday Night Football because potentially their biggest competitor in that category hasn't played yet this week. And if the Chiefs go out against the Buccaneers and absolutely wipe the floor with them, that opinion could change over the next 24 hours. Then again, if the Buccaneers are competitive with the Chiefs, that only furthermore cements the theory. And listen, right now, I can't do anything besides get behind you in that, Jason. I'm in that foxhole with you. I think the Baltimore Ravens have shown us against really good teams that they are there to play, and they can blow out your Buffaloes, and they can run away from just about any team in the conference, right? They're an Isaiah Likely big toe away from being the Chiefs' only loss of the season. That said, they lose really weird games still. And the Broncos were never really in this game. Obviously, it's dictated by the final score. I believe they had a 20-point lead at halftime, something to that effect. But that said, the Ravens are still going to have to prove it against another weird team to me.
I got to tell you, I don't care what the records say. I don't care that Kansas City's undefeated. I don't care what Kansas City does tonight. I know look, we're at the point of the season, 2 months in, a little over 2 months in, that I think we can start extrapolating from what we've seen, that there is enough data there, enough data points there, so to speak, that I think we can actually deduce who is who. There's 3 teams basically to me. It's Kansas City, it's Detroit, it's Baltimore. Buffalo, I kind of put on the fringes of that, with their escaping with a victory at home against Miami yesterday, who they just continue to find ways to beat every single time they play them. To me, Those are the three teams that I'm thinking of when I think of legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Like, we were talking about this league of mediocrity, and there is a huge chunk of it right now. But to me, I feel like, sort of that cream has started to rise to the top, and I would definitely put Baltimore at the top of that list. Obviously, Kansas City is right there. And in a one-game situation, anything can happen. But to me, on paper right now, and I know they don't play games on paper, Baltimore is a better football team.
I hear you. What
do you think of Detroit? What do you think of what Detroit did going on the road? I couldn't believe here's the dumber thing to me. My big takeaway yesterday, and I said this in the starting five this morning, I can't believe that was their first outdoor game this year. It's week 9 in the NFL. They just played their first outdoor game. Like, to me, that was kind of nuts to think about. The fact that Detroit just played their first outdoor game.
Well, that was one of the things that we talked about. It was a huge part of my cap on the season for them, and why I thought, if you go back to my seedings, when I predicted the seedings for the NFC, I had Detroit as number 1 because they play all their games indoors, and that's a team that's built on playing indoors, namely their quarterback, Jared Goff. Now, for this game, let's just say he proved all the doubters wrong. We are no longer allowed to call Jared Goff an indoor cat. He went out into the elements in one of the 2 hardest outdoor elements-wise stadiums to play in, and he dominated. Like, he was really good yesterday, and I think the Jared Goff MVP conversation is going to gain serious momentum this week because it deserves to. He just went on the road in the division against one of the best teams in the conference and put a beating on them. Like, it was very impressive what the Lions, to me, did on the road, and quite frankly, when we're talking about best team in the conference, I think obviously the Ravens and Lions are those answers. Best team in the NFL, I might put the Lions above the Ravens right now, solely because of how they've produced without Aiden Hutchinson, right? And then for 3.5 quarters of that game yesterday against a very good offense and a very good quarterback, without their best defensive back in Brian Branch, who got ejected for a very questionable call. And maybe in segment 2, we'll talk about the horrible refereeing from yesterday. Brian Branch with it for 3.5 quarters of that game. The Detroit Lions are proving that they have the depth which it takes to win a Super Bowl.
Well, in segment 2, we'll be talking to Bill Bender. I don't think he wants to talk about that. But in segment 4, we'll keep it all on track. It's okay. It's Monday. Well, in segment 4, maybe.
Haven't had my coffee yet. It's late in the afternoon, but I still haven't had my coffee.
By the way, the Jared Goff story is nice for MVP. As long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, it's Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson. I don't see any way. Unless you're talking about the Jokic syndrome where they're like, we don't want him to win it this many times and blah, blah, blah. Bill Bender talks college football next. It's a Monday on SportsWrap, and that can only mean one thing. It's time to talk some college football. Recap the weekend that was. Our friend Bill Bender is here from the Sporting News. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Looking refreshed and awake this week. I'm surprised he even answered the Zoom after I made fun of him last week.
I should be more tired. I was at a lacrosse tournament all weekend and bounced through the late night. That extra hour, I liked it this weekend. I don't like it in general. I don't like the short days.
I am one of those people, man. Let's just stay on one time. I don't need it getting dark at 5:00 every day. I am very much with you because it means I literally don't see daylight Monday through Friday because I don't have time to go outside during the day. So I see no daylight. I get no vitamin D, vitamin C. Which one is the one you get from sunlight? I don't know.
I thought it was A.
No, it's not A. Sunlight isn't
one of them's in
A.
oranges.
Yeah, one of them is in oranges. All right, let's talk about the Oregon Ducks, Bill Bender. Nothing standing in their way now from a Big Ten championship game, right?
No, and impressed with how they went on the road and handled their business. They lose Evan Stewart. That's a blow that could catch up with them later, but Trayshawn Holden steps in, makes the big plays in the passing game. He looked ridiculous, and Oregon just built to do this right now. And Dan Lanning playing with an edge. They even put in a late touchdown to get their point across, and that team is playing very competitive. They got one last road trip to Wisconsin that I think they should be able to manage, but this is a good football team. poised to be number one in the first set of rankings, poised to be in the Big Ten championship game.
Then the question starts to become, who will they face in that championship game? Indiana still hasn't played a top 25 team. Obviously, Ohio State still awaits them. Sort of, give me if you were saying today who they face in that Big Ten championship game, who do you think it will be?
No, I'm boring. So you know what I'm going to say, Ohio State. Ohio State.
Hell, you're not boring.
That's a boring pick. If I was edgy, I would say that Indiana's going to go into the shoe and win, but I'm just not that edgy. I think Ohio State's defense, huge difference maker. Will Howard's not perfect, but seems to make the plays and has a little bit of bounce back appeal to him. He'll make a mistake, then he turns around and throws a touchdown. I like that in him. Made the third down conversions. Indiana's very interesting the next 2 weeks. This is the height of what they have going on. I would argue even more than a playoff appearance, because they got Michigan at home, a chance to put a final nail in Michigan's season essentially, and then Ohio State on the road in a game that's going to be highly anticipated. And Curtis Rourke looks as good as any Big Ten quarterback right now.
So you're reading my mail, Bill. I want you to put on your hypothetical hat for me for a second. If Indiana beats Ohio State somehow, and against Michigan at home, Curtis Rourke does, 3/4 of what he did against Michigan State last weekend, do we enter the Curtis Rourke for Heisman conversation?
Oh, you're killing me, because as I've mentioned, he played for my alma mater. I'm an Ohio alum. I love seeing him do great, though. It's been a wonderful season. I think he can push into it. He's among the top-rated passers in the country. They've got a strong running game. You know what's not being talked about enough, and I hate being that guy. We're not talking about enough. Indiana's defense. Top 5 statistical defense. And you look at that, and you look at the teams that are projected to be in the quarterfinals of this playoff, at least what we have, 6 of those 8 teams are in the top 12 in total defense. So I still think there's an element of that in this game where we pay attention to offense so much we forget the defense wins championships.
The team you have projected representing the ACC in that college football playoff is Miami. Obviously, Cam Ward, the Heisman favorite right now. The conference shaken up a little bit with Clemson's loss to Louisville over the weekend, but does SMU have any realistic shot in this conference, Bill, in your eyes?
Of course. Clemson, by the way, most shocking result of the weekend to me. I can't believe. Yeah, just because the way Louisville beat them in their house, running all over them at will. Mm-hmm. Really no chance in the second half for like a patented Dabo comeback, or I don't know how many of those there are, but you get what I mean. You think they're going to win in Death Valley. But to answer your question, yes, SMU absolutely has a chance to win the ACC and give Miami issues if it comes to that between those two games, because they run a spread offense that runs a lot of plays, that fights through turnovers. That would actually be a super exciting game between Cam Ward and Kevin Jennings if it comes to that. Mm-hmm.
Give me a thought on Georgia overcoming Carson Beck's 3 interceptions and getting a win over Florida. And then I got to get your thoughts on the fights in the stands and police beating up on people. I mean, the videos were like, what the hell is going on here?
Guys, it's just football. In the stands. Stop throwing stuff on the field. I think we talked about that last week, where I would, if your fan base is throwing garbage on the field, I would immediately penalize the team. That will cut it out, because the coaches will lose their mind. If you say, to Dabo, all right, 15-yard penalty on you guys for delay of game. I think it's fair. The fan behavior, I've been through this for years. As somebody that's gone to NFL games, and you worry if you can take your kids. And I am somebody that when it comes to my favorite teams, I honestly just prefer to be in the living room. I watched Green Bay lose to Detroit yesterday. I gave the family the warning I was going to yell at the TV. I did. And by halftime, it was over. All the eruptions were over. I knew what was going to happen.
I wish we had the Tino Patino video of Bill yelling at his TV. I really do. I would kill to see it.
Penalties kill me. I can't deal with the amount of penalties that Green Bay had yesterday.
How alarming was Carson Beck in the 3 INTs real quick?
Oh, bad. This is something to watch this week against Ole Miss. If it happens this week and they throw 2 or 3 interceptions, they'll get beat. And that's a really tough game to pick. I still like Georgia. I still think Kirby will get them up for another road test. But really interesting, tough game to pick with them in Ole Miss.
Bill, how far, and we only have a minute left in this segment, but how far has his draft stock, Carson Beck's, fallen? I remember before this season, we were talking about him as like a potential first round, like mid to early first round pick. It seems like he's going to be like a day 2, day 3 guy now.
Now you got 20 seconds, Bill. There you go.
Ewers and Beck have a lot to prove in the back half of the season. And the more that happens, Shedeur Sanders is going to continue to rise up that board.
And here I thought we were going to get through an entire 2 segments this week, not mentioning Colorado, considering they didn't play. You killed that, Bill. Thanks. Hey, you want to kick my dog while you're at it?
I'll work on it. I won't do that, but I will talk about Colorado.
All right. We got more college football to do on the other side. It'll be Colorado free. Bill Bender continues next. We keep things moving, keep the college football conversation going as well with our friend Bill Bender. Sporting News does a great job on all things football. So, Notre Dame, there's talk about slippage for Notre Dame. Where is that coming from right now, Bill?
Slippage how?
Well, just I've seen people talking about them dropping in the rankings. I just wanted to get your thoughts. Don't yell at me. Don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, they didn't play, so I don't think
that's what I didn't understand.
Wrong.
That's what I didn't understand when I saw people writing about it.
So I think we're going to nitpick a lot if you are an SEC or a Big Ten 2-loss team trying to pick at Notre Dame and really pick at the scab of that Northern Illinois loss. And the fact that they really haven't played, Navy's going to be a ranked victory. USC's bad. That's really bad for them that USC has kind of tumbled out of the picture. They don't have a signature victory unless you want to say it's Louisville. And that lack of victory and kind of a weak strength of schedule, I think we're going to pick at. I still think they'll get in at 11-1. I like their football team. I really like their defense. Their defense is elite, but they didn't play a Big Ten schedule, and there's going to be that notion that they didn't earn it.
They are 30-1, by the way, to win it all on FanDuel right now.
Really?
Wow. Yep.
There might be some value there.
30-1. They are 30-1 to win it all. As is Indiana, by the way.
Oh, now you're speaking my language. I mean,
yeah. Well, I was going to say it's an indicator tomorrow night. There'll be a couple indicators. One, BYU. Where do they put them? Are they going to be in the top 10, even though they're the highest ranked Big 12 team? I'm glad you said that about Indiana and Notre Dame. Not knowing that, Saturday I wrote, that's an indicator to me. Where is Indiana and Notre Dame ranked? Is Notre Dame ahead of Indiana, who's undefeated, or is Indiana ahead of Notre Dame? And they will bring up the classic, if Indiana was wearing Michigan uniforms, they would be in the top 5. That argument's coming. And between those two teams, if Indiana loses to Ohio State, and it's like a 14-point loss, and we're deciding between 11-1 Notre Dame and 11-1 Indiana at the end of the road, it's a tough one. And to the Hoosiers, they don't really have a signature victory either. Their best win so far is Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, another thing that you wrote about over the weekend was how many one-loss SEC teams are going to be put in front of obviously undefeated Miami. Miami, a team that's played with their food all season. Even in that Duke game, which the final score reflects that they won strongly, there was a long period of that game where it was very, very close. How many one-loss SEC teams do you think are going to be in front of Miami on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I think, Texas is one of those teams that is the one to watch, because I think Georgia will be ahead of Miami. Then I think Miami is another indicator. If Texas is ahead of Miami, that shows that there's a disregard for the ACC race and what Miami's doing. If Miami's ahead of Texas, then it honors what they've been able to do with Cam Ward. You're going to hear the committee chair talk about a blank canvas. I wish I would have brought the bingo card. I've always wanted to make one for college football playoff ranking show bingo. And blank canvas is always on there because they say we start over every week, when the truth is you can't start over every week when each week is just adding to the body of work.
It's a good. I would say the team that probably had maybe the most taken away from their body of work this weekend. A&M obviously losing on the road at South Carolina in a game where they didn't score a single point in the second half. The final score not quite reflective of how close that game was late. South Carolina got a couple of late touchdowns on some weird execution from A&M late, but their hopes altogether are gone for the season on the college football playoff, right? There's no chance.
Not yet. I mean, they're going to have to overcome the Le'Veon Moss injury, though. That was the biggest takeaway for me. Them losing at South Carolina, the score was higher than I anticipated, but it got out of control once Le'Veon Moss was off the field. And that's that big physical running back that they have on this attack. And Marcel Reed wasn't quite the same, and South Carolina fed into it. So I think a second loss would knock them out. And they're going to have to play Texas at the end of the year. They still have a couple winnable games here. They're playing New Mexico State, playing Auburn, I think, in there somewhere. And they should be 10-1, or no, 9-2. They do have a second loss. So they should be 9-2 when they get to Texas, but they have one loss in SEC play. So they still are technically in that SEC championship race. And that's where if you get to the SEC championship game, it'd be hard to turn you away.
Bill, Louisiana Monroe is going to take disciplinary action against their offensive line coach, Cameron Blankenship. It's a video that's gone viral. Everybody's seen it, making physical contact with a player. It is astonishing to me. Given the era of NIL that we live in, given the era of college football free agency, essentially, that we live in with the transfer portal and players being able to come and go sort of as they please, at least right now, that a coach would be that stupid and lose his mind that much, because guys can just take off. Guys can say, I don't need this, because there's a million other schools out there that they can go and play for. How stunning was it to see that video? And it makes me wonder how much more of that stuff goes on outside of view of the cameras in practices and things like that.
So it's 2024, and you can't have that on the sideline. You can make your point without making physical content. Or content.
Sure.
That was plenty of content for everybody. I'm not opposed. I do a lot of the youth sports coaching. I just don't make contact at all, other than, you maybe tap them on the shoulder and say, let's go.
I can't picture you ever making contact with anybody, Bill.
No, I don't yell a lot either. I think that's the other one. I've learned over the years that your team, and I get football and it's amped up, and there's a ton of testosterone out there, but your team is a reflection of the coaches. So if your coach has a calm demeanor, you should have a calm team and ready for those kind of things. Does it work? Works sometimes in fifth grade. I don't know if it will work at that level, but it's unacceptable, the behavior that happened.
By the way,
Bill,
go ahead. Finish it. Go, Sam. We got a minute.
Well, I was just going to say on that point, we hear so much when coaches make these leaps from college to the NFL, the kind of discerning that they would make in how you can treat the athletes, one being a professional, one not. In the day and age that Jason was referring to, do you think that college-style coaching has to become more like NFL coaching?
I think the games are melting together and will continue to melt together, and that's the best way to keep good college coaches on the sideline, because at the end, a lot of these kids, their goal is to get to the NFL, and the games resemble each other more and more with each year.
I didn't get into Nick Saban's costume on game day. Kind of disappointed in that. How would you rate that? 1 to 10, Bill, real quick.
5. But hey, 6-2 at Baton Rouge. That's what he was. That's what to watch this weekend when Kalen DeBoer goes against the LSU Tigers. Nick Saban knew how to win down there.
Bill Bender, always appreciate it, my man. Check out his work, The Sporting News. It is terrific work on all things football. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, thank you.
We're coming back. More NFL on the other side. Let's take things to segment 4, coming up in 10 minutes. Something to consider. Joel Embiid wants somebody to shove. All right, Sam Yarnell. A few other NFL items that I want to get to here. We've got firings. We've got coaching firings. The Raiders have fired their offensive coordinator. Now, if you look at the banner on the top of the screen, you're going to say, well, how is that the headline, Jason? Dennis Allen was fired. We're changing the headline at the top of the screen. Boom. There it is. We fixed it for you. The Raiders fired an offensive coordinator, but that was trumped on Monday morning, no pun intended, by the fact that you've got the New Orleans Saints getting rid of head coach Dennis Allen. Boy, there's a saying in poker. For people who play poker, they will appreciate this. If you're in a tournament or a big cash game, Dennis Allen went from chip leader to cheerleader really, really fast. You want to talk about how fast things can change in this league. I mean, Dennis Allen was one of the sweethearts of the NFL. The Saints were one of the great stories of the first few weeks of the NFL. All these points they were scoring. Wow! Now the head coach is out of a job, and the team has lost 7 games in a row, Sam Yarnell. Wow. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you lose to the Panthers, and things are going to change. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that, isn't it?
This is... Jason, this is not a good look for the New Orleans Saints. This organization is in disarray. I said it last week on the show. That's why I picked the Panthers and Page versus the Prince. I said take the 7, but there may be value in the money line. Turns out there was value in the money line. This is a team that is reeling from being in the cap basement of the NFL, which they're supposed to be in for at least the next 2 to 3 years. And they're giving this coach no opportunity to win and then penalizing him when he doesn't win. Let's not forget, the Saints started out as one of the most productive teams in the NFL before they were absolutely ravaged by injuries. We're talking about their most productive wide receiver at the time in Rashid Shaheed going down, Chris Olave going down for an extended period of time. And obviously the concussion problems with Chris Olave after Sunday's game are going to become a huge question in terms of his career going forward. Right?
6 concussions, six concussions in 5 years, or 5 and 6 years, something like that.
If you go back to Ohio State, I think it's... Yeah, I think if you go back to his time before the draft, like it's even more extensive than that. Dire. It's like he's had a concussion every year he's set foot on a football field since he was at Ohio State, which is just, it's horrible. But the realistic question has to become, can Chris Olave come back from this? Not to mention your star quarterback, Derek Carr, getting injured and you having to turn to rookie Spencer Rattler, who not only wasn't good in college, really isn't good in the NFL. I'm just confused by the move. I can't fully get behind hey, Dennis Allen deserved to be fired. Right?
I go back to, I'll tell you what I think it is. I go back to a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the Monday night game that they had on ESPN. And one of the announcers at that point said, this looked like a team that didn't put in the effort. It's one thing if you don't have the guys, and it's one thing if you have injuries. But when former players and analysts start to look and say, you got no heart, that's where I think a lot of times coaches tend to lose a locker room. Like even Dallas, say what you want about Dallas, that team's still playing hard for Mike McCarthy. They may not be good, and we're obviously starting to figure that out, as is Dak Prescott, who made sure to tell the world, we effing suck. But at least that team still feels like it's putting out the effort every week, and it's just coming up short. The Saints right now look like a team that the effort just isn't there.
Doesn't it feel a little bit like there's a mutiny within the Cowboys, but rather than like what we've heard about happening potentially with the Patriots, where it's the players against the coaches and stuff like that, it's like the players and the coaches against the owner GM. It's wild what has developed in Dallas. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It kind of reminds you of like a football movie where like maybe somehow Jerry will sell the team, wishful thinking, and then they'll be really good right after he does, like what the Washington Commanders did. Obviously not going to happen, but kind of cool to think about sometimes. The Cowboys are in disarray. You got to start selling off. Not that they're going to, because again, it's Jerry Jones wishful thinking. But if they had any ounce of football intelligence right now, the Dallas Cowboys would try to acquire as many draft picks as they can, because you got to start rebuilding after you just handcuffed yourself, as you alluded to, Jason, to a guy who might be a bottom 10 quarterback in the league.
Special teams quarterback Darren Rizzi will take over in the interim. The Raiders fire their offensive coordinator Luke Getsy and a couple of other assistants, including offensive line coach James Craig, QB coach Rick Scangarello, who are in their first seasons with Las Vegas. You have to imagine, and this sounds crazy when you think about the love affair there was with Antonio Pierce, last year when he took over late in the season for Josh McDaniel. But you have to start wondering the question aloud. Is Antonio Pierce on the hot seat? Could they actually make a change after year one of Antonio Pierce, given the fact that there was this sort of love affair? And is it the Raiders basically making an admission that maybe fools rush in? Maybe they went into Antonio Pierce too fast and didn't do their due diligence.
I just think that this move, to me, solidifies Antonio Pierce. If they're firing the coordinator instead of the coach, that shows they trust the coach. Luke Getsy was a top prospect, just like we talked about.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, sometimes it's sort of, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll do more on it tomorrow. We're coming back. Something to consider next. All right, Sam Yarnell. Something to consider on this Monday edition of SportsWrap. I was thinking of Soul Asylum singing, "I want somebody to shove," when I saw Joel Embiid laying hands on a journalist. And I put everything in air quotes when I say journalist take, because journalism's got a lot of gray lines between opinion and opinion guys and journalists who give opinions and just straight up journalists. There's so much gray in the whole thing. So for people who didn't see it, Joel Embiid got into it with a reporter, Marcus Hayes, who was a Philadelphia, I shouldn't say a reporter, a Philadelphia columnist. For the Philadelphia Inquirer, a longtime columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Marcus Hayes, who wrote a column criticizing Embiid with everything that's going on with Embiid not playing. He played on the Olympic team. Now he hasn't suited up yet this year. And I mean, look, he got hit hard. He got hit hard by this columnist. That, I don't know if that bothered Embiid as much as the fact that this columnist referenced Embiid's deceased brother and his son in taking him to task. I think that is what upset Embiid. Now you can go and read it for yourself. I suppose I could just sit here and read it as well. But essentially, well, let me read it for you. Here's Marcus Hayes, who said, "Joel Embiid." I know. I'll get there. Don't worry. We're gonna land the plane. We're going to land the plane here somewhere, Sam.
That was very funny.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Joel Embiid, this is what Marcus Hayes wrote in his column in taking Joel Embiid to task. Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son Arthur as the major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to be great at your job, you have to show up for work, he wrote. Now again, you can argue that that's crossing the line, it's straddling the line, it's out of line, whatever you want to say. At the end of all of this, if you are Joel Embiid, you cannot, under any circumstances, lay hands on a member of the media. Okay, so let's first address that. If you got something to say about that, Sam, go ahead, because then I think there's a bigger point to where all this Embiid stuff goes.
Yeah. I mean, breaking news on the program, Joel Embiid is soft. Like, we're acting like this is something we didn't know. Are you serious, dude? You've been in the league for how? This is the craziest part of it to me. At every stage since he was on the national scale in basketball, Joel Embiid has been at one of the most covered been on one of the most covered teams in terms of media between Kansas and the Philadelphia 76ers, two marquee teams in their sport. And this is what you're getting the most mad over? Dude, you've played in Philly for what, a decade? This is wild to me that he would come to physical altercation over this. Like, yeah, it's a blogger being a blogger, dude. You live on the internet enough to know I've scrolled through your Twitter feed that you can deal with trolls. There's something else going on here, and Joel Embiid used this as a convenient ploy to cover up whatever else he has against this reporter.
After the column written on the 23rd, Embiid called out Hayes for being a, quote, dumbass. I've done way too much for this city, putting myself at risk for people to be saying that, he said. I do think it's BS. Like that dude, he's not here. Marcus, whatever his name is, I've done way too much for this effing city to be treated like this. Done way too effing much. And my question still is,
what have you done for your city?
Exactly.
You've done so much for your city, Joel Embiid. That means you must have played in the conference finals in 7 years in Philadelphia, right? Right, Joel? You played in a conference. You set up this whole process, right? Over 7 years, the process has to have led to a conference finals, right, Joel?
Yeah. Now, the thing is, I mean, look, I give him a lot of credit. The whole Bell's palsy thing and playing last year was pretty crazy. But there has been a lot of time, and the conversation before the season started with this whole thing of, I'm not going to play back-to-backs anymore and all of that stuff. All right. Take that and put it aside for a second, because I only got about a minute and 45 here because I circled the airport for so long. My bigger point on all of this is I think we're getting to a point in sports and relationships with athletes and the media that you're going to see less athletes giving less to the media, giving them the bare minimum. Yes, no, maybe. Couple of words beyond that just to satisfy their obligations and not getting fined by the league. This all goes back to when Derek Jeter retired and launched the Players Tribune, and you now have athletes taking control of their narrative, whether it's podcasts, TikTok, social media, whatever it may be. You're going to have athletes saying less and simply saying, you want to know the truth, or at least my truth, and not have to get pushback from the media? Go check out my social media accounts. That's where this is headed, Sam. And all of these columnists and commentators who take themselves so seriously, they're going to find themselves out of work because they're not going to be needed because athletes are going to tell the story themselves.
You're right, Jason. You're absolutely right. And in the NBA, that is especially true. I will say this, though. The team that we talked about earlier in the show has this same problem. There's a team in the NFL that we could draw a lot of comparisons to where the players don't talk to the media and they go on their own podcast. That team is the Dallas Cowboys. Look at how they're performing this year.
It's true. I'm sure Jerry Jones is on a radio station somewhere right now talking.
Probably threatening to fire someone else.
We're coming back. More Sports Wrap. We'll wrap it up. Odds and ends, Monday Night Football, NASCAR 2. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. On Tuesday's show, some weekend leftovers from the National Football League. We'll have a full recap of Monday Night Football, which we'll get into here in a second. In case you haven't heard the news, start spreading the news. We have launched a Substack for SportsWrap. And the reason is simple. We simply can't jam it all into 45 minutes every day. It's an hour show, 45 minutes of content when you take out commercials and all that good stuff. We have launched a Substack. On this Substack every day, you'll get the starting 5. It's 5 topics, 5 opinions, 5 minutes. We'll put it up every morning for you. You can get it on your way to work, get you all caught up on everything that's going on, all the big stories you and your friends are going to be talking about. We will have insider picks from this guy, Sam Yarnell, among others. Tino Patino, guest pickers, myself. We'll be putting up picks for all different sports. So if you love to bet, Go and check it out, and we will do it with transparency. When we win, we'll tell you about it. When we lose, we'll tell you about it. It'll all be right there for you in black and white. Even when Sam has a good day, it'll be up there. When Sam has a bad day, it will be up there. We will have giveaways. Our very first giveaway, a $100 gift card to Fanatics. We will give that away at the end of November to new subscribers. Go and subscribe today to our Substack. We'll also have merch, SportsWrap merch, maybe a T-shirt with Sam's face on it, making one of the many faces that he makes during the course of a show. We could do that as well. SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast is also available. Make sure to go check that out on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including YouTube now. We have joined YouTube podcasts as well, so go and check that out. All right, without any further delay, Sam Yarnell, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Almost the end of the NASCAR season. There is just one race remaining. It is Phoenix. It is next weekend. I don't know if our friend Tino Patino is going to survive, by the way, because based on his reaction to the end of the race yesterday with Ryan Blaney winning at Martinsville, which is always a fun race because it's this short track and they can't go faster than like 105 or 110 miles an hour, which is, for these guys kind of slow because they're always turning. Left-hand turns. Ryan Blaney, your winner. Don't destroy your setback there to make a point. What do you got? What is that?
Martinsville Speedway.
Oh, very
Half
nice.
mile to Mayhem.
That's a very cool ticket. I love it.
This is a ticket from the only ever... At the point of the race, it was. They may have had one since.
Okay.
The only ever NASCAR race that was postponed due to snow.
I love it. That is great. So there you go. Ryan Blaney, your winner. The Final Four for the NASCAR postseason is set as well. So congratulations to Ryan Blaney on getting himself into that postseason. Joey Logano there as well. A couple other guys. It's down to 4. We'll talk about it.
The head-to-head at the end was the coolest part of the video from Tino. That's when he got the loudest. It was awesome. Yeah. Electric scenes in NASCAR. Let's kick it into overdrive for the last race of the season.
There you go. Pun intended. Monday Night Football, Sam Yarnell. We've got the Chiefs at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a banged-up Buccaneers team. -9.5 on the Chiefs there. -480 on the money line. Whew, the juice is loose. Buccaneers +370, 45.5 is your total. What you got?
Props wise, I would go for Bucky Irving, rushing plus receiving yards. I'm a big fan of the rushing plus receiving yards market. It's been nice and lucrative this year. Numbers 51.5. Listen, it's lower than Rashad White's, and I cannot understand why the books continue to cap Bucky Irving as the RB2 when week in and week out we are shown that Bucky Irving is the RB1 in this offense. So give me Bucky Irving over 51.5 rush plus receiving yards. And then on the Chiefs side, I would go Patrick Mahomes under 4.5 rush attempts. -108 the price on FanDuel right now. Do your line shopping. You might be able to get an under 5.5 there. But yeah, I don't think that Mahomes is forced to run a lot by this Tampa Bay defense. I think this turns into a blowout. I don't know if I'm comfortable betting the 9.5 just because the number's so big.
It's big.
I might look at a Chiefs team total. I might also look at the over straight up.
Yeah, I'm thinking over straight up, actually. That's where I am, too. I see maybe, garbage touchdown late. If anything, I would take Tampa. If I was going to do anything on the line, it would be Tampa Bay +9.5. I don't think the Chiefs cover this. And if I were going anywhere with the total, it would be over 45.5. Not in love with this game. Don't have strong vibes, strong feels, if you will, on this game. Before we go, it is Election Day on Tuesday. If you have not done so yet, get out and vote. I don't care who you're voting. Well, I do care who you're voting for, but I'm not going to really talk about that. If you're going to vote, though, make your vote count. I mean, it's a binary choice. Don't go in and write Mickey Mouse just because you don't like either candidate. It's a binary choice. Vote for one of the candidates that has a viable chance of winning. But just more than anything, just get out there and vote. My Electoral College prediction, Sam Yarnell. I've got Kamala Harris at 308, Donald Trump at 2:30. That is my electoral college prediction. I wanted to get that on the record. I have her winning Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. I have her losing Arizona. I also have her winning Nevada.
Wisconsin?
Yes, win. She's gonna keep the blue wall.
I'm with you.
She'll be the next president of the United States. Get out and vote. No matter what you do, exercise your civic duty. Thank you to Bill Bender. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thank you, Sam Yarnell. That's Sports Wrap.